Hello YouTube! Today in the Naughty Librarian I am going over my mid-November wrap-up. I have read 7 books so far this month. That is like a little higher than normal. Usually I've been around 5, but I did 7, so look at me. Killing it. And here's the kicker on top of that. I've read 7 books and the lowest star rating I gave any of them was a 4. Like, everything's coming up Amanda right now. I'm very happy about it. So yeah, I've read really good books lately. Let's get into my reviews. First category is romance, and I read 3 of them. First things first, I read Would I Lie to the Duke by Eva Lee. And you know what? I know it's not the best book, but for me, I just enjoyed reading it like so much. I gave it 5 stars. I don't care. I don't care if I know it has issues. Who cares? I liked it. I read this whole book in one day. Like, I could not stop reading it. I was obsessed. I really liked the characters. I liked the plot. And it's just a really cool, fun concept, like this whole series is. So this is book 2 of the Union of the Rake series, and basically it's this group of friends who went to Eton together, and they're the Union of the Rakes, and they are all like our lifelong best friends. And this is book 2, and they're all kind of based around like 80s rom-coms and 80s like teen movies. It's all 80s movies basically. Like, they have a very obvious homage to Risky Business in here, where he even mentions, as a child, I like to be in my shirt sleeves and socks and just skidding across the floor when his parents weren't home. So it's like, oh my gosh, you're Tom Cruise. This one is Noel and Jessica. Noel is a duke. He's very much, you know, the Tom Cruise of this crew of rakes. And he, you know, is a businessman as well. And then you have Jessica, who is kind of like Cinderella if Cinderella was also a con woman. Which, I mean, I know that's my own way of describing her, but like, yes. If someone else told me that was in the book, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I want to read that right now. So Jessica has to find investors to save her family business. She's a commoner, and she kind of like just cons her way into the ton a little bit to secure investors in her family business. That does include lying to everybody about being a lady, including Noel. They kind of have this growing attraction throughout the whole book. And it's nice that their attraction is like a gradual thing. It's not just like insta love. I mean, they both think each other is hot when they meet, but that's like not unusual. So I like to see them like growing into friends and into lovers. Like, they kind of have this good build up to the relationship. Also, you know, I wouldn't say it's particularly smutty. Like, it only has like maybe 2 or 3 scenes, but like the smutty scenes in the book are like mega smutty. It's more of a quality over quantity situation here. There's not a lot of them, but the one you get are just like, oh man, that's a whole chapter. And hey, fun fact, this is actually submissive male, dominant female, so they're kind of switching it up. And so if you would also like to see a sexually submissive Duke and con woman Cinderella making it work, this is the book for you. I had so much fun with it. I could not put it down. Read it all in one day. Loved it. I also read Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. I was really excited for this one. This is a pre-order, and oh, it delivered. Like, I think I gave it like 4.5 stars. Whatever. 5 stars. Screw it. Everything's getting 5 stars. Whatever. We're finally getting Wes and Bethany. This is a couple that has been hinted at in other books, and you've just been wanting them to bang it out because it's like an enemies to friends to lover situation. And Wes, he's kind of like a literal cowboy who moved to New York to kind of step in and take care of his niece because his sister has taken off, so he's kind of reluctant father. And Bethany is the most type A person who has ever been type A. So like I was saying, it's enemies to lovers, and it's more not necessarily enemies, I would say. Actually, I would say it's more antagonist to lovers. They both just kind of like rattle each other's feathers, you know what I mean? So they're not necessarily enemies, or just think about things completely differently. They're kind of opposites, I'd say. There's a lot of laughs built into this. that you're just wanting. It's kind of weird hyper reality, but in like a fun way. Like in this book, we have Wes and Bethany. They are trying to flip a house, and Bethany's brother flips houses. They end up meeting like a producer, and she's like, hey, this sounds like a TV show. In comes TV crew. Uh-oh, it's a TV show. So now they're on a TV show trying to flip a house against her brother. Hyper reality kind of vibe here. It's just silly things that are just like out of the ordinary, but like it works in a rom-com because you want something silly and funny that's just gonna lighten the mood, and that's what it gave me. It just gave me good vibes. Hey Amanda, how's the smut? I'm glad you asked. Tessa Bailey never let you down with smut. Like, I went into this book thinking, ooh, this is gonna be smutty, and you know what? It was smutty. I had a really good time with it. I think if you don't like heavy smut, you're probably not gonna really get into this one. There is other things going on besides just smut stuff, and I would say maybe this one's the least smutty of the other 2 books of this series. Maybe. I don't know. It's debatable, honestly. I think book 2 is the smuttiest, but anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Tools of Engagement. So basically, this is delightfully smutty, and it's funny, and they have characters you really want to root for, and also I thought their relationship was actually really cute, and I was glad to see them kind of come together. So overall, it gave me everything I wanted. Loved it. I had so much fun reading it. It was another book I just couldn't put down. I was having all the fun with fluffy rom-coms this month. Speaking of fluffy rom-coms, I also read Well Played by Jen DeLuca. This is the highly anticipated sequel, at least for me, to Well Met. We're back at the Renaissance Fair, so it's a Renaissance Fair based rom-com, which already sounds like a great time. So this time we are following Stacy, who is our main character from the last book, her friend, and she's looking for love now. And this guy named Daniel, kind of spoiling it just a tad, because for a lot of the book she thinks she's actually talking to Daniel's cousin Dex. This is kind of a long distance relationship, gradual growing attraction type of situation. For the past couple summers, Stacy has hooked up with this guy named Dex. You know, he wears a kilt. He's like hot kilt guy, you know, that has its own appeal. We get it. And she's hooked up with him for a couple summers. He has his cousin Daniel, and they're in a band, and she just randomly emails the band one night saying, hey Dex, you know what, I kind of miss you, and gets a message back. She's like, oh my gosh, Dex is actually writing me back, what? So for a lot of the book, she thinks she's talking to Dex. However, she's actually talking to Daniel, because Daniel has had this long suffering crush on her, and then, you know, he's like, well, I can finally talk to her, you know, like a Cyrano situation, and it's kind of a sketch a bit, because I don't like catfishing situations, but I kind of just going with Stacy on this one, because she didn't necessarily feel super bad about it. She was actually like happy it ended up being Daniel, so like I'm kind of okay with it because she was okay with it. I mean, it's a sketchy situation, but like it worked out well in the book. Like I just was like, all right, I'm gonna suspend my disbelief. We're following them. They have this long distance relationship for most of the book. Like over the course of a year, they're sending emails, they're texting, they're having this long relationship, getting to know each other. And summer comes along again. They're gonna see each other in person. She's figured out it's Daniel. And this is gonna be a rare instance when you hear me say I enjoyed the slow burn aspect of this book. Like, I never like slow burn. I don't have the patience for it. But this time it worked because you're just seeing these people like grow a relationship and get to know each other, and it felt like it was beneficial for the plot. And like Stacy's, you know, I don't know, figuring out herself and like what she wants out of her life. You know, there's also personal development along with the ride here and the romance. And I don't know, it's just like a delightful romp. It's in a Renaissance fair, for heaven's sakes. Like, it's going to be like low stakes. And you know, sometimes you just want that. It's 2020, things are rotten enough. Let there just be a Renaissance fair rom-com. And I had all of the fun with it. There's like silly characters, and like, I'm feeling the next book of this series. I think I know who it is. I should have looked up who it was, but I know who it is. And I'm like, ooh, it's gonna be an opposites attract story, and I'm so into it. So yes, love this. I am going to pre-order the next book. I had a lot of fun with it. Just don't take it too seriously. It's a nice, fun read to just like hang out with. You know what I mean? It's just a chill read. Next category is fantasy, and I read 3 of them. I read A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. And yes, I know this book has a bit of controversy around it, but I wanted to read it. And you know what? I'm really glad I did, because in the end, I ended up giving it 5 stars. Like, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was this chef's kiss. It was so good. Before we get into the controversial aspects, let's just talk about basic plot here. This is a like dark Hogwarts situation. It's a place called the Scholomance, and wizard kids go there. Except this isn't like, oh, fun Hogwarts with silly professors. This is like, there are no professors. The school will teach you itself through magic. And also, there's hundreds of monsters that will eat you at any time. So it's very dangerous here because, yeah, there's literal monsters that just eat kids right and left. So with that as the basis of the plot of the book, you can like go into this, at least for me, this is how I think it works, if you go into it and you expect this to be like a dark comedy. Because in dark comedy, the jokes aren't funny, haha, you're gonna laugh at them. They're funny like, oh no, where you get the joke and why it's funny, but it's not supposed to be in good taste. And so, you know, sometimes like you get the humor, but it's not like a laugh out loud funny, it's like a groan funny. And yeah, so go into this thinking it's a dark comedy, and I think you're gonna get the right tone for the rest of the book. In particular, we are following this girl named Elle. She is basically a dark wizard who doesn't really try to be a dark wizard. Everyone has like an affinity for a certain type of magic. Her natural affinity for magic is mass destruction. She didn't choose that. That's just like what her magic wants to do. So she's kind of very much an anti-hero. She's just like, fine, I'll like save you, whatever, stop making a big deal out of it. Like, she's very sarcastic and snotty, but like in a fun way, because like her whole life is just like mass destruction all the time, and she's just like, listen, like that's exhausting. So you either like Elle or you don't like Elle. I happen to like her a lot, but then again, I like anti-heroes. From that basic synopsis, let's talk about the controversy that is surrounding the book, because there have been a lot of talk about racist comments that happened in the book, and I'll give it to them. If you take certain, you know, passages out of this book, out of context completely, they sound kind of bad. Like, I'll give it to them. However, in context, they're not bad at all. And it's not like, oh, I'm like dismissing racism, because the things in the book aren't actually racist. It goes into the dark comedy aspect of it. So like I mentioned, this is a school full of hundreds of monsters that will eat you. And they go through that. You know that this is well established in the book. And Elle is talking about all the kids, and no kid has long hair at this school because it's a liability. You're just giving something for monsters to grab. No one has hair longer than shoulder length if they can help it. So this has been thoroughly discussed. And at one point, she does talk about locks, for example, and how there's like a particular creature that likes to burrow in them, and then it will lay eggs in your skull. So locks were a bad choice in this instance. And the author did a Twitter apology about that one in particular, because it's a bit tone deaf. But considering in context where she's like, it's bad to have any type of hair that's easily grabbed or anything like that, and it's thoroughly explained why locks don't make sense in this setting, has nothing to do with the racism involved. It has to do with monsters will eat you. Like, everyone's forgetting that kids are getting murdered right and left in this book. Like, we're starting at a dark baseline here. I don't really have the best voice to be discussing what is or what is not racist. So I did do some research, and I'm going to put a link down below. This is a reviewer of color, and she wrote a whole review of this book and how she herself, she's on the same boat with me. She's like, yeah, it's a dark comedy. Like, this isn't racist, it's a dark comedy joke. And she's much more articulate than I am, so I'll put a link to that down below. I recommend checking it out. She's very articulate, it's a good read. But that being said, I mean, it's up to you whether or not, like, that's gonna be your vibe or not. Personally, for me, like, I think I got, like, the dark comedy joke aspect of this. So everything within context isn't bad. It's just when people pick things out of context, you can make anything look bad. So I don't know. It's gonna be up to you as a reader what you think about the book. I happen to like it. I thought it was very funny, and it was, you know, it's not funny, haha, it's funny like, oh no. It's one of those. I liked it for its dark comedy aspects, so I liked it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was very good, but of course this will be up to you. What do you think about it? I also read Star Daughter by Savita Trakar, and you know what? I was like iffy going into this one. I almost didn't read it because I was just like, it's a YA fantasy. Like, I'm so hit or miss with YA fantasies. Like, they're either fantastic or I'm just like, bleh. So it can go either way, basically. And this one I was like nervous about. I'm like, is this gonna go bad? And you know what? Surprise hit. I gave it 4 stars. I actually enjoyed it for what it was. Is it a YA story? Yes, it's very much a YA story, but it was also like well crafted enough that I enjoyed it as an adult. I did think it was for a much younger audience, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty fun. Basic idea here is that we're following Sheetal, who is a teen. She's about to turn 17 years old, and her mother is a star. Not a celebrity, a literal star from the sky. The celestial stars are actual humans. They're like an entity that live in the sky. Their own magical world. And her dad is human. So she's kind of half star, half human. She's lived with her dad her whole life. Her mom is like left back up into the sky. However, she's 17. Puberty is rough. And she accidentally goes all star and Bernie, and it hurts her dad. And she's like, oh shit, I gotta go get my mom to fix my dad because she has like magic. So here she goes up into the sky to go find her mom, and things are not that simple as well, because now they're like, hey, so we're having this big competition, and the winner of it, like, they basically get to decide who rules the stars. So like, hey, Sheetal, I know you're my daughter and stuff, but like, you're totally our champion now, go compete. So she has like a lot of things going on. There's like a big thing about art in this book and being a muse and inspiration. And it also has really, really cool Desi representation. I'm sure they exist. I just haven't read a lot with like modern Desi teens. So I thought that was really fun and interesting and it's culturally immersive. So that was a really fun aspect of it. Now, being an adult and reading a YA story, I will pick up on plot holes that I think a YA audience might not have picked up on. For example, one big one that I kept thinking about the whole time, Sheetal, when she goes into the sky, she brings her best friend with her. So this other human girl is up in the sky with them for like days, like 4 or 5 days they're up there. And I was just thinking the whole time, like, what do her parents think? Like, she didn't go, hey, mom, dad, I'm gonna go up into the stars with my friend. She just, like, disappeared one day. And no one talks about it. No one's, like, thinking, oh my gosh, my mom and my brother and my sister and my dad, they are all horrified that I've been murdered. Like, that's the plot hole I kept picking up on. I'm like, what about her parents? What about her family? She just disappeared. But like I was saying, for a YA audience, that's not something you're gonna pick up on. As a grown-ass adult, I'm just going, oh my gosh. So I couldn't give it 5 stars because there are some plot holes here. But overall, it was like fun, you know? It was like a fun YA fantasy. I believe this is a one-off, not a series. I suppose it could be a series if she wanted it to be, but it is a one-off. And I kind of like that it was a one story, it was a one and done. It has great cultural representation, it has like a cool magic system, and I just liked it. I thought it was like a fun read. You know, it's not like super dense and like grown up, but like it's fun, you know what I mean? It's a fun read. So on the opposite spectrum from fun light fantasy, I have, whoo boy, grimdark fantasy with The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie. This is the next book of the Age of Madness series, and the first book of this series, whoo boy, like it has some bombshells in it, and I was like, what's going to happen? And so I come into this book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? So it's just me like having reader freakouts like every other chapter, going, what? Now that's happening? Ah! Ah! Yeah, I was just flailing like a Muppet. Like that was my life while reading this book. It's very hard to describe what is happening in this book because, mind you, this is a very well-established world. Of this world, this is like the 8th book in it, so there's a lot of history to go through. But essentially, it's political intrigue and, you know, kings and battles and rebellion and all kinds of stuff. It's like, you know, typical magical kind of world with quests and stuff. And then this new series, this new aspect of the world, is a bit later on just chronologically. So, you know, industrialization has come into the world. So this is a different world because now there's machines doing all this labor. And how does that affect the common worker? So they have some kind of, you know, real world synthesis here. And also, you know, what happens to magic? What happens to the relics of the older age when you get into this new age? Like how are things changing? So that's like the interesting murky background of this world. But oh boy, like oh my gosh. Like I can't get into it. Everything I say will be a spoiler, but like some shit happened in this. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And I have to wait for the next, oh my god, I have to wait for the next one. Like, I'm just not even saying words that make sense, but, whoa boy. Things go awry is the best way to say that without a spoiler. Best laid plans here, the worst possible conclusion for it. A lot of our main characters that we've been, like, really enjoying their story, they are at, they start the book at one point, they end the book at a completely opposite trajectory. Everybody has a 180 in this book, so all the characters who were doing well at the start, like, don't get attached. And then some characters who are struggling, you're like, okay, like, I see what you're doing, you're coming on up. So everything's getting just turned on its head, and it's like a crazy book, and oh my gosh, there you go. It's the best way to describe the book. It just sounds, but yeah, it's like, like I finished this book and I had to take a day off. Like I couldn't read anything because I was just like book hungover because it was so intense for so long. Anyways, it's good. I liked it. I gave it 5 stars. The review made no sense, but it's very good. I recommend the whole world and all of the series in it. They're excellent. Last category is sci-fi, and I read one of them. I read The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I think this is a debut, and also it is a one and done. It's not a series. Liked both of those things. And since it's a debut, I think it's a debut, or at the very least, this is an author I've never read before. And I was pleasantly surprised. You know, like I did end up giving this 4 stars in the end. I couldn't give it that 5 stars, but I'll get into that. It's a really cool concept they're working with here. Basically, it's a multiverse, and one of the worlds of this multiverse has perfected interdimensional travel. The only caveat is that you can't go to another reality where you already exist. We're following Kara, who is a traverser. She is basically, you know, a company girl. She works for this company and they send her to other worlds to like gather data. That's her job. The thing that makes her very valuable for this job is that her other selves on other worlds are exceptionally good at getting themselves killed. So I think there's like 382 worlds and she can go to literally all of them except for 7. So like there's not a lot of her left. That's the basic idea for the plot here. There's more to it, obviously, but that would get into spoilers. I gave it 4 stars because I felt like the beginning of the book was really kind of meandering a lot. Like, it makes sense why it was told that way, because you're building up plot points and like, this is important, but for way later in the book. So it's just like, I felt like the storytelling was just too meandering. It could have been a straighter line, and it was just like, we're going on all these weird side shoots that we didn't need to go on. It could have been shorter to get to the point of those things before we got into the main idea of the story. So, I mean, it is about a multiverse and multiple different worlds, so there is going to be a fair amount of meandering involved, but it just felt like a little too, they took too long of the way, you know, it was just too off course at points. But that's not to say its ultimate direction wasn't good. Like, I did enjoy the book. I liked the characters. I thought Kara was a really interesting main character. She is kind of reluctantly altruistic. On the one hand, like, she is a girl who grew up in the slums. She has lived kind of a dog-eat-dog lifestyle where, you know, she has to be ambitious and ruthless to survive. I mean, obviously, there's only 7 of them left. Like, a lot of her selves weren't ruthless enough. So she has this like interesting viewpoint on the world and her class dynamic in it. It was kind of an interesting way to talk about class, actually. That's like another thing I'm just putting together right now, that, you know, they have the people with the haves and the have-nots. Obviously, there's a lot of, you know, through sci-fi and multiverse stuff, you know, scientific wibbly-wobbly stuff. You actually get a kind of an interesting look at class divide and rich versus poor, have and have not. This is actually kind of an interesting look at that kind of dynamic. So that's kind of a fun aspect of the book I'm just like putting together now articulately. And, you know, it does have like a bigger plot to it. Like I said, she's reluctantly altruistic. She's very ruthless, and she's very much, I gotta take care of myself first. But she's like, damn it, I like them. Damn it, I'm gonna save them. Damn it. Like, you know, reluctantly, like, she's gonna have to save the day, even though, you know, it's not in her best interest to do so. And it's an interesting dynamic. I liked, it has like a dash of Mad Max in here. Like, basically, like, I don't know, like Star Trek meets Mad Max, I think would be like an okay way of describing the world this is set in. And it's fun. I think it's like a really good, promising debut. If it's not a debut, at least it's the first book I've read by this author, and I thought was very good. I would read other things by the author. I think it was well crafted, if a bit meandering, but I thought it was really good. 4 stars. I couldn't give it 5, but 4. It's a solid 4. It's really good. I recommend. Okay, so that was 7 books. I have read a lot of books. Everything I read, I pretty much enjoyed. The lowest star rating I gave out was 4 stars. November's been dope. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books? What are your thoughts about Deadly Education? It's a bit controversial. How did you feel about it? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I will see you guys soon. Bye.